monetized, and I don't ever slow up. No, I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.
All right, so we are back. We'll make sure we're back and live. I'm going to go double check this here. Give me a moment. I apologize, but this is going to.
Hi, Sarah.
Oh, Sarah is in. Okay, good, excellent. Hi, sorry about that, everybody. We might be firing my. I stream off EV Mux, and it seems like this is that's the second time it's happened. I mean, I stream everyday trials and everything. I don't know. Brybear, that is correct. They are statements. Now, depositions would be admissible as long as they're sworn, or it's really not so much a deposition. Deposition can be used. Deposition statements normally can be used for impeachments, but in the event that somebody is dead or unable to testify or in the wind, not available, then a deposition, as long as it gave the ability for both direct and cross-examination to happen, then it could be brought in lieu of the testimony. But a statement can't come in unless it's inconsistent with the testimony being given. And the reason why they want to do that is because imagine if you just put in you let somebody testify and said 7 different times they told this story. Remember, when they're in court, and this is something you got to remember, it's something a lot of people don't necessarily remember, is that when they're testifying, that's the evidence. Like it doesn't matter what they said to the police. It doesn't matter. The evidence is the story they're giving in court, which is why John Travis Johnson is allowed to come into that courtroom, and before that jury, that is the evidence. Now, Ty Tucker's allowed to confront him. He can confront him with the past police statement. He can confront him with any prior inconsistent statement. Now, one of the dirty things the prosecutors tried to do is they were trying to slip this by Ty, and Judge Jones didn't do it because he at least knew how bad it would look. But they were trying to introduce the proffer as a consistent statement to say that. Now, there is one hearsay exception. You can put, if on cross-examination, a defense attorney challenges a witness or the prosecutor challenges a witness's credibility, then as long as you have a statement as long as you have a statement that predates the date that they're alleging the inconsistency. So, for instance, in John Travis Johnson's case, he was inconsistent to his testimony, or he was consistent with his testimony of what he gave Penny Phelps starting the night of the interrogation. So that can't come in. Okay, you can't put that before the jury. After the fact, Ty Tucker confronted him with the fact that he changed his story and said, "No, I didn't do this." That can come in. Now, what they were trying to do was they were trying to put in the proffer, which basically was proffering the same testimony now that he had told Penny Phelps that Penny Phelps gave him. So they were saying, well, he got confronted, so we now get to put that testimony in, dated from 2023. Well, no, you can't. But Ty Tucker wasn't catching on to what was going on, and he wasn't making the right argument if you play that portion back. And at that point, Alvarez jumps up and pulls Mansfield down because he knows that this would be an absolute reversible error if that was allowed to go forward.
So the proffer could have come in had it been.
If the proffer came in, that the appeals court would have absolutely reversed the case. And that was when Mansfield said, well, this is a very unique circumstance. Basically, that 2 skilled prosecutors are getting to take on a guy who's never tried a case in his life. We don't want to mess up the record with something like this. So, you know what? Never mind. We're not going to worry about playing that for the jury. So they went a different route. That was when they went in and did the sneaky, dirty way that they said, okay, if you want to put Paula on the stand, then we're going to take that little piece of her testimony where she says that Ty Tucker told her that there was blood on a knife consistent with Matt Bonnet, which he told her that because he was told that by Phelps, but knowing that the police statement couldn't come in because the police statement can't come in this case because it's not complete. See, Ty Tucker's statement can't come in because the rule completeness is you have to have a complete statement. Now, pieces of it can come in for purposes of confronting Ty on cross-examination, but that's the only way it can come in. Well, that's why they waited till closing argument to drop that bomb on Ty and say, well, the jury never heard that. And since Penny Phelps never testified, they could have questioned her about, did you tell Ty this, or what was the discussion? But since she never testified and it never came before the jury, that was why it was so dirty and egregious. And who,
You know
lo and
why
behold,
she didn't testify?
she didn't testify because Ty didn't think it was going to be well to put her on the stand because they were afraid she would lie through her teeth. And, he just felt like, again, even Judge Jones was saying, why would you put her on? Because she's going to be able to testify. She's going to be testifying you did this. So there's a danger in that. And, he didn't feel like that was a chance he wanted to take. So yeah, Becca, you didn't have to wait 15 minutes. But it was a risk. It was a risk. And they from talking with Ty and Lauren, they said they just didn't think that was worth it. Now, my opinion is, again, I almost agree with that because like you and I were talking about not in this stream, but we were talking off stream and say, a criminal trial is not about proving. The defense doesn't prove anything in a criminal trial. The unique part about the American justice system is the state has the burden of proof. So as a result, you should never, the defense should never take on an unnecessary burden because it should just simply take on the burden that they that they need to, and that is they come in, they question, they confront, and they put on witness, and they put in only evidence that is slam dunk, and then they go and they argue, hey, the state didn't meet its burden. If the state doesn't meet its burden, that's good enough. If there's a doubt, if there's even one doubt about the case, technically speaking, a not guilty verdict gets delivered, and that does not mean the jury is saying the person didn't do it. They're saying the state failed to prove its case. And that's Alan Dershowitz was talking about the OJ case and said, that's the distinction made here. People say, well, do you think he did it? Well, no one knows if he did it or not. But what we could say is the jury made the right decision in that case because they didn't prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Much like the Ty Tucker case, there's a parallel there. Everything ran through the LAPD and the labs and the detectives and the people there that messed up the case. So because that's the evidence you have to rely on, then there's a reasonable doubt right there. That's why that jury was able to just very quickly in 4 hours and say, well, we believe the LAPD messed this case up. And all the evidence had to run through the labs. All the evidence had to go through those detectives' hands. We've got detectives holding blood for, 2 days before they're booking in evidence lockers. That's pretty easy. And that's why in Ty Tucker's case, the most important pieces needed to simply be get in the IA investigation. And again, the way you get that in, just like in the Karen Reed case, they're going through that. How do you get it in? Business record exception. It's a business record. It's allowed to come in. And you bring in whoever's the custodian of the records, and it goes in. And then he can question it and enter it as an exhibit and enter it to the jury. And once that comes in and you can show that they mishandled this evidence, that there's missing videos, there's missing tapes, there's evidence that was stored inappropriately.
Can he use their own protocols and procedures against them?
Absolutely, yes. Yes, he can. Yep. He can question them and go right at them. Yeah, absolutely. But he's got to know how to do it. Yeah. And that's why a good attorney and a moderate attorney in this case who could beat this case. I mean, this is not Rory Wilson. Rory Wilson's a totally different, the other co-defendant that got convicted. He got convicted because they actually had DNA evidence. They don't have DNA evidence on Ty.
No.
They have inconclusive reports, but the state gets away with all their BS for the simple fact that Ty doesn't have representation in the courtroom. And then Ty engages them and gets distracted.
That it was positive.
Yep. All right, so let's get back to the video. I apologize, guys. We're going to keep watching this here.
On this video.
In 19:45 and 15 seconds, the truck
pulls back up in the same direction.
Can you hear her testimony?
I can. Can everybody hear it? Hopefully.
All right, so this is a truck pulling up and parking. So it's the second time around that it's come. And you can see, as she points out, the headlights are there on the other side of the boat where it's pulled up. And you see a glimpse of the two suspects.
One person, two people walking towards where the treehouse is. At 1951.
Now, what I think is interesting is I was told that one of the jurors, and I know people in my chat also came in with this, claimed that that image right there of those two people, that the guy on the right, they claimed had the gait of Ty Tucker, that he walked like Ty Tucker. Now, I don't know how much walking he did in that courtroom, but I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking about? I mean, I did not see any other videos that I know of where Ty Tucker's walking. The only other video we saw with walking was the Keys Electric. So I'm thinking, did this jury misunderstand that? Because if he walks like the guy in the Keys Electric video, that's John Travis Johnson. But that's what people were saying, was he walked with the swagger and the cocky gait of Ty Tucker. But anyways,
Danielle Malone also said that she recognized it was Rory Wilson because he was a big guy.
Yeah.
And he had Ty cross-examine her. There's a lot of big guys out there.
Yeah, there is. Yes, there is. And how could you tell you really can't tell that in that video. I mean, that's
the point.
Yeah.
What would the jury be looking at that portion of the video?
When this portion starts, you can see from this direction where the treehouse is, right next to this boat. You're going to see something come out here with a flashlight.
Something?
That is correct, Gabby.
Okay.
That has a flashlight in there.
She got demoted, I think, didn't she?
Yep, she got demoted. She's now a 911 operator.
One caller.
T.S. Jackson, it was not. That was just an observation apparently they made, and then again when they got in the jury room, that was what they were saying.
If you listen to her testimony in this, the first time she says it's Rory Wilson and John Travis Johnson, and then the second time round she's saying that it's Rory and Rory and Tucker.
This video is where that video just ended. This is picking up right.
Yeah. So just so we can, the juror, yes, Sarah, a juror said that they believed, just to clarify this, because I don't want people to get distracted on that and then miss what's in the videos. A juror, what I was told was one of the jurors when they were interviewed said that they were looking at this video and they believe, based on how they saw Ty Tucker walking in the courtroom, I guess they watched him walk in and out of the courtroom and everything, that they believed that the individual that you see on the right, which would have been Ty Tucker, he would have been the one you saw on the right and Rory's on the left, that he walked like Ty Tucker. And that's what he saw. And there was another person. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, that's crazy. I mean, I'm looking at that. I can't tell what the gait of the person is. But again, that's what you get when you get. I served on a jury. I had to direct everybody back into the room and remember what did we hear at trial. You can't go on this speculative expedition. Well, it could have been this, or maybe they did that. No, if we're doing that, that in and of itself is reasonable doubt, and a lot of jurors don't see that, because it's like when you have a question like that, and they're sitting there having to rely on his gait that was never even offered evidence, that's not an evidence.
Yep.
Right there with the video files are sometimes too large to do all at once. So
yeah, I had to laugh at this. The file was too large.
Next section.
But to be uploaded in two.
Yeah.
In two.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
Mm-hmm. Whatever.
Well, that was one of their excuses. for breaking it up. That's why they, I think what it was they cut it up so they could get rid of the stuff they didn't like.
Yep.
person wearing all dark, and it's very quick and it just happened. Want to see somebody come out from the treehouse,
Get out of the way. Thank you.
right in here.
I know. It seemed like they just Alvarez positioned himself to.
Run that
Every time.
direction
Yep.
where the truck was.
You think they could have got a better shot?
So yeah, that's why I put this video.
Now, did you get this? Did you get this one from Franklin Tucker's website, or was this
Yes.
in the trial as well?
No, I think I got it from
From the trial.
Free Tank. Free.
Oh, Free Franklin Tucker.
Yeah. Yep.
Coming
Just
down
screen
the
grabbed it.
I see. Okay, so.
Yeah. So this is
according to
Ty
the
now cross-examining
investigation,
Danielle Malone
that
regarding
subject running down the hill.
how she identified these
Okay, just making sure.
individuals.
So that's according to the investigation, but again, just to clarify, can you see that that's Todd O'Quinn in this video? Okay, just making sure. Okay, but that's based on your investigation. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, if I remember correctly, you see another subject come out. If I remember correctly, if you would refresh my memory, is this?
Yes.
Okay, again, can we pause for a second? Okay, who's this? Who do you suspect, based on your investigation, that is?
I believe that is Roosevelt, Washington.
Okay, you believe that's Roosevelt, Washington. Okay, but from the video, again, you can't see that that's Roosevelt, Washington, right?
Correct.
Okay, just want to say, okay, clarify those two things.
Yeah. So he's trying to clarify
And is there anything else about
how
this
she
video that
identifies
you
them.
remember?
There's the last part where the subject is leaving the treehouse and seeing kind of lumbering,
Okay, let's go ahead and we'll let it go to that point.
1954 and about 13.
I thought I cut this down.
Well, Sarah, yeah, this part Ty didn't do too bad of a job, but because the point he's trying to make with all of this is you can't tell who anybody is. So again, it didn't come across as clear as it could have. But what he's trying to get her to say is, which he probably a good defense attorney could have literally asked 2 or 3 questions and got this done. And it was just simply this: isn't it true that video that you see right here, you can't tell independent of your investigation? If you're just looking at this, there's no way to tell who's who, right? And they say that's correct. And everybody you identified was identifications based on information you obtained after watching
John
this.
Johnson
Yeah. In
testimony.
other words, she didn't just look at this video and see it, and the jury can see that in their own. Oh, I see what you're saying, sir. I got you. No, you're right on that. That's a good point. See, I was thinking, I didn't think that would work against them, because to me, I was like, that way they'll see that it, well, I think he should have grew his beard out long, just so they could literally see how long that beard was, because that was another thing was Todd O'Quinn. Of course, Todd O'Quinn's not, didn't testify in the case, but nobody said they saw a beard. And I know they said they had this Jägermeister gator on, but I mean, where's the beard, and see that he looks much older than obviously John Travis Johnson, so it's like, if you're getting a younger description and that's what the descriptions are, to me, I thought him being there in the courtroom would have helped, but it actually ended up, hurting him in the end. So yeah, good point. He probably should consider that. That's a really good point. Unfortunately,
he said it was a sandy head, curly head.
Yeah. He said, yep, and it tight cut with curly hair on the top, and Ty definitely didn't have that. Yeah, I mean, not even close.
And to clarify, Ms. Malone, you're reading from the official affidavit that you wrote, correct? Okay. There's a person that just ran up the hill. Could we please back it up a little bit?
Yeah, there was someone that was not identified.
somebody right there at the top. Oh, that right there. See somebody who came running up the hill? Can you pause that, please? Again, according to your investigation, who do you believe that is?
I can't even see who he's talking about, let
So
alone
it's an unknown party.
identify
They
them.
could, again, even though we've accepted that, these people are running from the treehouse.
Yeah, absolutely
you can't
not.
really see that, correct?
You can fast forward to
The
the
treehouse proper, the
to
property.
the Google Images if you like, because it does get a bit repetitive.
All
But
right,
that's
we
where
will.
she's pointing out where the
Gate
treehouse is,
going out or
where it's
anything like
obscured by that
Okay,
canopy.
just checking. And so you don't know who this subject is, though. But
Well,
we're
we will
gonna-
go up and
Conveniently.
look at this here.
Or tell the jury what report or what video you're referring to that tells you who's in that truck.
Objection, Judge, asked and answered.
Yeah, that's been asked and answered. I'm gonna sustain the objection.
Okay. Okay. Again, this video is what?
So this is
I'm
the
sure you're
electric
very familiar with
company.
it. Mr.
Yep.
Malone, could you
He's
please explain
electric.
to us what this video is again?
And there's a reason why I wanted to stop at this, because, and this is the most important thing to consider. Where is the, okay, this is something, and when we get to the Google Images, you'll be able to see it. The direction that everybody said these individuals went, there is only one way they come back to that warehouse, and that is on this camera. So where, if they have that footage, where is the footage? And remember, what John Travis Johnson says is he drove back on his own, and Ty would have walked back on his own. So where is the footage of Ty walking back to the warehouse? Where is the footage of John Travis Johnson driving back, which would have been consistent time-wise with him having left? And then you should see then Ty come right afterwards. But what do you see? You only see John Travis Johnson walking to Tom Thumb, and then you see Rory and John Travis Johnson walking back. Where's the rest of that video? This is the video that I say that, and again, that there's a case that I talked about in my lives, and then Ty picked up on it and looked into it, and he read it. But this is the case. This is the situation where when the state has evidence that they can test or review, or that could be exculpatory to the defendant. In other words, it could prove that the defendant is innocent. And in this case, if they have that video and Ty Tucker's not on that video walking back, and you don't see John Travis Johnson's truck, come back until, showing he would have had to be the second guy, and you never see Ty Tucker ever. Well, Brady is part of that, Sarah. But the Osaka Lumi case deals with Brady. It's a Brady violation, but it's a due process issue. What it is it says that the judge must give an instruction to the jury that they would consider, basically, if this is used in court, and since there's a missing portion of this video that the police had in their possession, the state can use it and show it to the jury and show what's going on. But there also needs to be an instruction that says there's a missing part that the police had, and that since it's missing and it was lost by the police and they lost it, that since Ty Tucker alleges it was exculpatory, in other words, that it proved his innocence, that they are to consider that as, that they are to consider
Discovery.
well, they are to consider that as a favorable to the defense, and the light is viewed favorable to the defense. In other words, they are to consider that the lost evidence would have proven his innocence. So you take that coupled in with Paula Belmont says he's not there. Mm-hmm. You put in all the other issues that are going on. You put in the fact that there's nobody that the jury would have to consider that he wouldn't have been on that video. That's basically what the jury would have to view that as. So when a jury goes back there, if you have a lawyer arguing this case, they can argue that the police lose this video, and it's video that would have shown that Ty Tucker was not coming back, that there was only one person on that video before Rory and John Travis Johnson are walking back from Tom Thumb, and that you would see the truck of John Travis Johnson driving back to that warehouse. And then you're going to see John Travis Johnson go to Tom Thumb because Ty Tucker was never involved. And furthermore, you would see Ty Tucker was also saying that this video should have shown him walking later on in the evening to Tom Thumb, like he told the police. His alibi was that he and Travis walked to Tom Thumb later in the evening after the police had shown up at the warehouse when he got up because Ty needed cigarettes. So
Yep.
you put that in front of the jury, and then you've got all the other issues, and you got the fact that there's no DNA evidence. Remember, the other factor of this video too. There was one mask and one knife found tucked along the pathway. So Rory tucks that in, hides that along his way because he didn't have a way to hide it. So we're to believe that Ty just carries that all the way back, wide open, and he doesn't hide his. It's never been found. They've never been found. They never found that mask ever. They've never found that other knife ever. The reason why is because that ended up in John Travis Johnson's truck, and he was able to get rid of it, and it didn't need to be found, and it wasn't able to be found by the authorities because John Travis Johnson had it, which makes that video of Phelps right there at that truck 45 minutes after this happens all the more disturbing, because had they just taken the time to search that truck, imagine what they would have found in there. They would have probably found a bloody mask and a bloody knife. And
one of the very first police body cam videos that they've got up on the site, they name John Travis Johnson, Rory Wilson, only 2 assailants. They know where they live. They know exactly where they live. They had it all right there.
Have you seen the body cam footage at the warehouse where Phelps is down there? If not, you should go and take a look at it.
No, I saw an interview of April and the arrest of
no,
Guy.
this is actual. It's Officer Brady is the name, and there's Officer Brady and there's Officer Pacifico, both of their body cams. 45 minutes after this happens, Phelps and company go to that warehouse. They're standing out front, and John Travis Johnson is out front in his truck, packing his truck up.
Yep.
They walk up to him and talk to him and have a 15-minute discussion, to which Pacifico says, I know that there is a Detroit that lives here. And John Travis Johnson says, yeah, there's Rory Detroit. He lives downstairs with his girlfriend, but he's not here right now. There's another white Detroit that's in jail. And he essentially convinces the police that they're looking for that there's a white guy named Detroit. It's not that guy, and that guy's not home. And the other guy's like, no, I know he's home. He's home. He's downstairs. They saw the lights on I don't think there was lights on, but he said he had seen him in there, and he's got a pregnant girlfriend, and they walked through there. You've got John Travis Johnson packing his truck up, looking like he's trying to get out of town. You've got they're looking for a white dude and a black guy named Detroit, and they're being told they're right there. And Phelps says, "Pack it up. No, we're going to the other end. We're going to the other end of the Hogfish to go look down at look at the boat docks to see if it's a shrimper." And she directs everybody away. She could have solved the case in 45. The question is why? And the question is why did he get that pass?
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if they had found it. They might have got wrong. Well, the thing is, it was never booked in TS at any point, at least in the records. So there's no record of anything being lost or destroyed. And if it would have gone to the lab and got tested, there would have been a record, and it would have had to say it got lost. And that would have absolutely met the Osakalumi standard of getting that instruction on something like that.
And what was in the backpack that was found in the vent? Yeah,
that was Paula's backpack. So it was just her belongings were found in it. And of course, obviously, there was allegedly $1,000 that was found. Depending on who you hear, Paula says it was $250, and there was supposedly some crack cocaine that was found in there, which they allegedly smoked at the warehouse that night after all things settled down. Allegedly, Ty and Rory and everybody smoked it, and then there was another guy named Big John, and there were some other people that were there that allegedly smoked it all night long. You know, and is that possible? They did. They could have. You know, I mean, but that doesn't mean that Big John or Ty or anybody else was
Doesn't make it.
present. You know, or did it. You know, it just means that those guys went and did what they did and came back and had their party because they had their fruits of their criminal
Mhm.
activity. All right, so let's we'll play this here. Let me get back onto the video.
This is the video from the Florida case of electric surveillance.
But I mean, you can look and see how clear it would be to see. Like if Ty was coming down there, it would have been right on this video. Travis's truck, you'd have been able to see. You saw that truck come up and down. I mean, you might have even been able to see how many people were in the truck.
Okay, can we please
There's
stop there?
Travis right there.
Okay. Now, based on your investigation.
There's actually someone in one of the houses in the back there that comes out onto the balcony as well.
Yeah. Well, see, and I mean, yep. So it's crazy to me that we don't see the rest of the footage. That was something that I was wondering myself in the trials, like, where's the rest of the footage? And there they come back now.
Please pause it right here. Okay, now.
But even that's unclear. How do you identify that?
Yep. Well, exactly. Well, that's why Travis.
Okay. And,
That's why John Travis Johnson, when he was in the initial after his interrogation, they took him in and tried to show him the video, and he tried to suggest he wasn't certain it was him.
so, in this video, we see a truck, right? I would agree it's a truck, I think. even
Oh,
the
that
state
flashlight's
truck, right?
come up in the wrong
Okay.
bit. It was supposed to come
You
up
know this is John Travis Johnson's
in
truck.
the other bit.
because-
Oh,
I
gotcha,
think so.
gotcha.
Correct? Just making sure.
Yeah, you can go straight to the Google
All right.
images.
Oh, to the Google images. All right, let me get right there.
Yeah.
Okay, here we are.
It sort of does a 360.
Looking for cameras. So there's a camera right there, right? Right
out the front. Keys
right
Yamaha.
there. Yep. Right there. That one. And there it is. And I think that's the one that
Mhm.
Todd O'Quinn said would have seen everything that was happening
Well,
on that street.
You pan left. There it is. There's the treehouse right there.
Yep. That would
Right
have shown everything that was going on right here.
Yep. So this is basically a pin dropped right in front of the treehouse and did a 360. So there's
And
one.
there's a camera right there, I think,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
And that's the ones I think that they were also pointing out that night. But these are the ones, these cameras on
I
the
wasn't
on
sure of
CBS,
those, but there's a
they
double
got the
one.
wrong day. And the same with allegedly that camera right here in the street.
There's a double camera right above the doorway at the CVS pharmacy. I think I've had. There's the treehouse,
Yep.
and in comparison to where the
Yep.
Cosmos
Allegedly, the story on that is that they got the wrong day, which is crazy to me. Yep.
So that's the boat that you can see where the actual camera 3, you can only just glimpse them, the two suspects coming through. So this one shows there's the door right there. This is directly in front of the treehouse. 2 cameras.
Wow. And
Yep.
that would have absolutely shown right. I mean,
Yep,
right
both
down that road.
directions.
That would have shown exactly what was happening. Was there a truck
Who's
there or
coming,
not?
who's
Yep.
going.
Well, we know the answer to that. They would have seen the truck sitting there the entire time.
Yep.
Yep. They would have handed a fence rest. That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I like that. All right. So let's switch up here to this here. I don't know if there's anything. We're talking about the article we can't get into, but this article is, let's see here. Let me pull it out so I can control the article here. All right, so there we go. So this article essentially talks about the fact that he's being held on $3 million. What we were trying to pull up was the article that
Lord.
Ward is quoted in as saying he's going to have him brought back in shackles and chains and have him rode on a van across country, which remains to be seen if that actually happens or not. But we hope that's not what happens. All right, so let's see what we got. The corruption is beyond. I agree with you, Sarah, and that's why it's shocking to me that more people haven't.
Yeah.
Or more media hasn't gotten involved.
Yep. This article also has the where it's in red. You can actually click on it and go to that site. So you can actually go to the
Right here.
I can't say that word, Multnomah County, yeah. And you can put in his details, and it comes up everything that you need to know.
Yeah, we can pull that up here.
Wait. Yep.
There he is. Yep. 5'9", 163, fugitive.
Yep.
He's still there. So, yeah, you can continue to check on him and see if he's
I actually sent them a request for some documents, but because I wanted to get hold of the extradition order or the waiver, and I must have asked for the wrong thing. But yeah, it was free, and you can go in and ask.
Oh, can you? Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So I might go in and ask for some police records because I think I went into the wrong section.
Well, what I would like to get is the body camera footage, I'm sure that was going on, and figure out of his arrest at the airport and see exactly how that went down.
Yeah, well, that Key West News said that he was picked up in the smoking area of the. They were so.
Oh, was he really? Oh, he was picked up in the smoking area of the airport.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Oh my.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not surprised because I think he's probably was trying to get his last few cigarettes in because I don't think when he gets in jail he can smoke at all. I mean, unless they figure out a way to
I don't know. I've never
make their inmate cigarettes. I'm pretty certain. Wow. So, and that was in that article. So they really got into some details in that article then. Well, see, that's what I'd like to see is just figure out, like I said, I got to figure out, I guess, I don't know if it's airport security that would have the body cam footage or who you would need to put in. I think you can put in a Freedom of Information Act request.
Yeah, well, on this site, it would have been this county sheriff's office that arrested him, wouldn't it?
Well, they would have taken him into custody, but in the airport, it's actually the airport police that have to do it because they have jurisdiction over the airport, or at least they'll be present. And then there probably would have been, they would have probably called, because probably what occurred, in my opinion, is he got flagged most likely, I would think, unless, again, that's what we don't know. I don't know if he walks out of his apartment and they go, oh, he's on the run, and that's why they issued a fugitive warrant. Yeah. Because I know there was an arrest warrant for him that he had to turn himself in on because that was to get him to come back.
Well, that was the whole point of him going to the airport. He was trying to surrender. Well, but
exactly. But he didn't follow proper procedure. That's the problem. No. Gabby, to my knowledge, yes, the computer is at the airport. Basically, airport police took custody of that because they said that there was too much. He had too much stuff. I mean, I don't know what he was taking with him to go turn himself into the jail in Key West, but apparently he had too much stuff for them to take to the jail in Portland. So they left it. It's apparently at the airport or in their custody. I think Lauren is trying to work on getting it back because, I mean, I was recommending he leave all that stuff at home. I mean, I would have never taken that. I would have left it. You don't want that to come up there to them because they have a right to take control of it. I realize the real world is not like the CSI shows, but the quality of investigation associated with a bunch of recent trials, including this one, is horrible. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is, Bribear. But I think it's also, in this case, it's intentionally this way because one of the things you have to understand is this case, we'll switch back to one of the things you have to understand about this case is the reason for all this behavior by the police originates in the fact that the individual that caused this whole problem, her name is Anthea Clay. And this originates because Anthea and Paula are not getting along. And Matt essentially evicts Anthea from her little spot that she was staying there at the treehouse. And there had been a war going on between her and Paula for a while. And essentially Anthea allegedly had attempted to get several people to go over there because her goal was to go get Paula beat up and get her, send a message to her because she was mad at Paula, and maybe, and just teach her a lesson. It was not expected it was going to go the route it did. And then when it did, and Matt Bonnet gets killed, the problem is Anthea Clay is working for the high intensity drug task force.
Well, the theory was that both of them were informants.
Yep.
Apparently.
Well, Anthea was particularly important because allegedly she was involved in 4 major cases. And allegedly, it's believed, and if you look there, you're going to see, if you look at Matt Pitcher's, his little, I don't know, it's this little thing he's writing on. It says HIDTA, HIDTA. In the HIDTA task force, Penny Phelps was head of that. And the HIDTA task force is basically the federal drug task force. And it runs that area because Key West is a place where drugs can come in and out on the shrimp boats and everywhere else. So a lot of times the captain of the police there, the sheriff, they will make them head of that task force. She was head of the task force at the time. One of the big ways they make a lot of money, and those people make money, is they get bonuses based on drug seizures. So one of the key ways, law enforcement officers can make a good bit of money when they're on these task force is once you get convicted of a drug crime, anything that was used, a house, a car, any property that was used or bought or came from the drug activity is allowed to be seized and sold. They're not allowed to keep it. And that's part of what they were, these big cases that they had. There was a lot of money at stake in these cases. So Anthea Clay was important to getting convictions in this case because she was the informant that made the controlled buys. So if she gets popped for a murder case, oh boy.
And she refused to have her police interview recorded at all.
And that's why she contacted them that night. She actually contacted Penny Phelps that night. She made a call to Penny Phelps right after it happened. And there's a belief that they had a surveillance operation because remember, Mueller, who is the first officer on the scene, was right up at CVS. She was sitting in that parking lot, and it's believed that they had undercover officers positioned at that CVS. And when this went down, that's how they were able to get there so quickly because they were there already. And of course, they're watching and they're monitoring, and that's why they very quickly get Penny Phelps on the scene. So my belief is Penny Phelps comes on the scene, and her idea is we've got to protect Anthea. And I think the way she saw it was go get Rory. One of them gets convicted. One of them gets flipped. And we control both of them because one has a deal and the other one is discredited because they're sitting in the penitentiary for the rest of their life. So either way, they're good. Or they both take a deal, and we control both of them that way. And Anthea is protected. And she made her move on Ty first, thinking that that's who it was. And then realizes that, oh my God, there's contradictory evidence. But she says, well, who cares? This is a bunch of homeless people. So we're just make Ty part of it. And then in their world, it's like, well, this is a great situation because Ty's innocent. He'll be sitting there. He'll be more apt to take a plea that would allow him to walk out of jail. And what's it matter whether you're sitting at Monroe County Detention or at COTS?
And he wasn't homeless. He was down there cleaning up for the hurricane.
Correct. But in her eyes, that's what she thought. That's how she grouped him. And as a result,
there was apparently the $1,000 as well that was supposedly marked as part of the drug money, which was the whole reason the robbery occurred in the first place.
Yep. And that's, like I said,
That's another story.
that's the cover up that leads here.
Yeah.
And then it gets out of control. And basically, the wild card, the joker of the story, the one that nobody saw coming, didn't realize it was still in the deck, and it pops out and says, oh my God, it's messed everything up. We have 53 cards instead of 52. Who's Lauren Jeanette? And she enters the picture and provides Ty with resources that was never expected. And then emboldens Ty to be able to fight back. And Sarah, no, I have not filed anything for the body cams. I was actually trying to figure out what department I would have to do that with. I have not done that, but if you know someone who has, that would be that. I hope we can get him because I'd love to see the body cam of the arrest. But yeah, and I think that that's what happened in this case, and that's what caused this to become something that was unusual because she gets involved. Ty gets a voice he never would have had.
The more you dig, the more you find, the more it just blows your mind.
But the reality is this: is as much as Ty wants to believe that he's going to out this, he will never do that unless he gets acquitted. And that's what I was always trying to communicate to him. You've got to fight this case. You've got to get a lawyer in there. You've got to fight and win. And you've got to win. And the way you win this case is you've got to attack it from a standard of, there's a lot of reasonable doubt in this case. There's no way they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt in this case that he's guilty. And you get the right attorney in there, or if Ty can present the case correctly, he can get a not guilty verdict. And then that's when you go attack everything. That's when you can get a civil action. And that's when the Justice Department might be moved. What's that?
Isn't there such a thing as prosecutorial immunity?
No. Not willful misconduct. If it's done in the course of business, but if they willfully do something, no, you don't get immunity for that because that's intentionally. Yeah, that's as criminal as the criminals they're prosecuting. But if it's something that's like a mistake, yes, they would be immune from being sued, or but not willful, intentional acts, and that's what would be being alleged here. I mean, in my opinion, I don't know the ins and outs of all the things that were going on because I only have the viewpoint of the motions. But one of the things I do not understand in the case is why this case didn't move forward and try to get the appeals court in. And once they had the IA investigation and all that stuff, why would we not have filed a motion to just recuse? I mean, Monroe County should have been disqualified from this case. It should have been moved to another area, or at least a judge brought in from another place that has nothing to do with Key West. And there should have been a special prosecutor brought in. Why Dennis Ward's allowed to prosecute this case when you have, assistants that have been disbarred and you've got prosecutorial misconduct. I mean, they went after it with a dismissal, but I don't understand why his attorneys, and that's still been done in other cases and it's done all the time. In cases where you have misconduct.
To the equation.
Yeah. So it's pretty crazy to me that, but again, I don't know the ins and outs. I know that Ty, everybody's got to remember his attorneys he had, right? And this is a problem in my opinion. The attorneys he had, while they may be very good attorneys and they did some good advocacy work on his behalf, I mean, they did get some things out. But at the end of the day, they're Key West residents. They live in the community. They try cases in the community. Those are not the people that are going to stand up against a good old boy network. Now, I'd heard time and again from Ty, from Lauren, well, they don't like outsiders. And they tried to bring an outsider in, and their person, well, yes, but you got to give that outsider a little leeway. Eventually the outsider will learn procedure, or better yet, don't bring an out-of-stater. Just bring somebody in from Miami or up north, but somebody who knows Florida law. But the outsider sometimes is the one that's got to come in because they're the ones that don't have to try cases ever again. That's why in Karen Reed's case, they have an out-of-state attorney that's been brought in because they know that they're not going to bring someone from the local bar in who's got to try cases there, who could have repercussions from the judge and the judges. So they need somebody who can go scorched earth and says, I don't care. I'm never trying another case here again. Or if I do, it's 10 years from now, Well, that's Gabby. I agree with you. That is what I've been trying to say from day one. The sell job is not right on this, and you don't even need a name brand attorney. There's a guy, and every time I'm talking to Lauren or Ty, I've been saying, Jose Baez. I'm sure everybody's familiar with who he is. He's the Casey Anthony lawyer. I read his book, and before that case, his law office was in a shopping center. He was a late bloomer in the legal field, and he was a hungry guy. He was a fighter, and he wanted to go in and try. And he knew he was a good lawyer. He wasn't when he took the Casey Anthony case, though. Nobody knew who the hell he was. It's just like my dad. My dad came into town, small town in West Virginia, right outside of D.C. This town, my dad was came in from D.C. and moved here, and there was a good old boys network here. But he comes in and starts taking cases, starts fighting the system, and he cut his teeth with this was in the 70s. It was a gay school teacher who killed his lover. And if you can imagine, and it was also a black man. So this is a West Virginia town. That was the biggest thing to slice spread. He's a school teacher's in it. And my dad got him off. Not only did he get him off, but the guy my dad raised as the person that should have been the guilty person, this individual the police go and arrest him 2 years later. He goes to Oregon, no less. Okay, right where Ty's at. He gets on TV, and they're picking him up and extradite him, and he tells the TV cameras, "I want one lawyer. I want Steve Askin." So my dad represents him. Now this is the guy my dad who had just represented and accused this man of doing the crime. My dad gets him off on a not guilty. So my dad used to tell us, but that was the case that made my dad that, and when we were at his funeral, the people were coming in and they were talking about, a lawyer was talking about, that was that particular case and was saying, but that's, the idea here. When my dad took that case, he was nobody. Nobody knew who he was. Nobody thought he was any good, but he took that case and it blew him up. And, that was the stuff I was going to have him talk about, because my dad could tell these stories and he could tell you about the case and all the different things that were going on with it. And when the verdict came down, it was the middle of a snowstorm. And he said that was the first time he realized what a big deal it was, because he goes outside and the whole community in a snowstorm is out beeping their horns all around the courthouse because of the not guilty verdict of the original guy. Because the school teacher, their first guy that was charged, was a loved individual in the community. So when he got found not guilty, it was like people were happy that he got acquitted. And it turned out that he didn't do it. But like I said, that guy is out there for Ty. But somebody's got to go find him. We got to figure out who it is. And they got to understand there's a bigger picture. There's a bigger picture out there, because after that, like I said, that made my dad's career. And then he had many other cases that he beat and won.
He did a lot of pro se work as well.
Well, what he did, when he basically, my dad's could be a Netflix story of its own, but my dad, unfortunately, as he's building up, my dad also had a unfortunate monkey on his back, and that was that he made the unfortunate decision to try cocaine, and that ended up when you're fighting the government and you're winning cases and you are using cocaine at the same time, that's kind of a not so great situation. But my dad was a brilliant legal mind, and they wanted to go after him. So they put the people that or individuals that had been providing him with that on trial, with the sole purpose of wanting my dad to have to put my dad on a witness stand and take his law license from him, or at least get his law license suspended and stop him from practicing. So they achieved this. My dad goes in. At the time, cell phones were brand new, and the law wasn't clear on whether or not you could listen to a cell phone without a search warrant. So my dad raised the issue and said, well, it was what they're going to rely on to prove that I was in contact with these people is protected under the Fourth Amendment, because at the time it was illegal to listen to it. Shortly after what I'm about to tell you about happens, my dad, they pass it and make it so that what the government was doing was okay. So he goes in and challenges it and says, I'm not going to testify because the only reason why they knew I was talking to these people was this protected phone calls. So he refuses to testify. He's held in contempt of court. When he's held in contempt of court, of course, if you're held in contempt of court, you have to prove that the testimony that you're going to give is relevant and would have resulted in or deprived the prosecution of important testimony that would have that hurt their case. Well, the judge, who was a young judge who had a lot of respect for my dad, said, you know what? You're a respected jurist. I'm going to assume you're not doing this just to protect your drug addiction. I'm going to presume that you're doing this because you have a valid legal action. So she lets him leave because the government wanted to lock him up and put him in jail for the duration of the trial. Well, there's TV cameras there from the local Washington news media. My dad's walking out. It's a zoo. The press is there. He's walking out, and he had an attorney, a local attorney who's now a pretty prominent attorney. But at that time, he just come to town, and my dad made him his attorney. So they're walking out, and they're wanting pictures, and they're stumbling over themselves. So he says, you know what? Give him a picture. He's happy. And he puts his hand up on the wall, smiles, and I have the picture. I'm going to show it eventually on my channel. But he puts it up, and it's the most unfortunate decision he ever made because the next day, it ends up on the front of all the newspapers. And the U.S. attorney goes into the judge and says, he's laughing at us. He's laughing at us. See, I told you should have locked him up. And the judge at that point was furious. And she said, indict him. So after that, they go and they convene a grand jury and they indicted him for criminal contempt of court. And then they went the equal step of the way to say, well, he wasn't just trying to cover up drug use, that he must have been part of that by him not testifying, he was helping the drug conspiracy. So they also indict him of drug conspiracy. So a couple of months later, now the issue is he takes it to the Fourth Circuit and he hires the equivalent of a dream team there. He had the attorneys that represented Lorena Bobbitt. I don't know if you're familiar with who that is, but she's the lady who cut off her husband's. And he's got, top attorneys from all that they come into his case. So they go take this down to argue this issue. And this is why I know about dirty prosecutors, okay? Because this is how my dad got did. He goes in, they go down to argue. As I mentioned, the law changes. Congress changes the law. So when they get there, and when Congress changes the law, the appeals court only have to take up an issue since the law's already been changed. If there is potentially, it could impact ongoing. And in the case of my dad, if they don't find that it's a valid legal issue, the government can indict them. So when they show up to argue it, the government shows up and says, we're not planning to indict Mr. Askin. Says that, holds that all out to the Fourth Circuit. So the Fourth Circuit says, well, if they're not planning to indict Mr. Askin, then we'll kill the case. We're dismiss the appeal. Guess what? Not only were they lying to the Fourth Circuit, but they had a grand jury that was already convened hearing a case against my dad, and the prosecutor went in and lied directly to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. And a month later, they indict my dad for criminal contempt and drug conspiracy. Ultimately, he fights this thing for 2 years. And the drug conspiracy they knew was absolute garbage because they figured out that, again, that was the theory they presented to the grand jury. My dad always said you could indict a ham sandwich. So they acknowledged that the theory of the case they put before the grand jury and the stuff that they put in there. The other thing they said which is not correct, but they had an officer go in and testify. My dad, allegedly, according to the drug dealers. Now, the drug dealers at that trial, this is to show you the impact. They all got 30 plus years in prison, right? So you can say my dad really hurt them by not testifying. I mean, they ended up getting all convicted and got 30 plus year. Once they got their 30-year sentences, they were willing to come and testify against my dad. Now, prior to that trial, They said they weren't testifying. They all sat in a big room. My dad he knew all the lawyers, and the lawyers, they all said, no, we know nothing about him besides he bought drugs from us. But he was not involved in our operation. Absolutely not. Why would he do that? He didn't need to do that. But anyways, he was just a purchaser. Well, after that, they start remembering things. He checked on a license plate for us. He told us how to do this or how to do that. But the crux of the government's case was they told the jury that because my dad, because of who he was, and he had a lot of money and they knew he was good, he wouldn't always pay for allegedly for his drugs when he would buy it. So they might run up a couple $100 and then eventually he'd pay it off. Well, they told the grand jury that was allegedly that's essentially financing a drug conspiracy. Well, it's not, because he's buying drugs. He's not financing anything. It's for something he's already received. I mean, it's not right that he's buying drugs, but it's not, that doesn't contribute to conspiracy. And then on top of that, of course, they said, well, he chose to not testify. So anyways, long story short, the drug conspiracy was going to get tossed. So they came to my dad and said, you can plead guilty to the criminal contempt and argue that the criminal contempt should be treated as basically a civil matter. In other words, a fine, walks away. Maybe he does some community service if they felt like that would be that. And the government can argue that you were trying to obstruct the court and obstruct justice. And they can make their, case that you were trying to help a drug conspiracy go forward by not testifying. So I had at the time, it may not be the longest, but they had one of the longest sentencing hearings in history of our federal district court. They basically had a mini Steve Askin trial. I was there. I was a kid. I'm going in and out with the press and everything. So that's why I say I have a unique experience. I was, at that time, let's see here. I would have been 14 years old. Well, when it started, I was 12. I was 14 when all this was going on. I'm there observing all this. I mean, it was crazy. It was stressful, and my parents, of course, obviously were stressed out. I mean, my dad, the probation report that came out about a month before recommended 22 years for my dad, which my dad was like, that's crazy. But, well, they were all, trust me, this was, I mean, you can't appreciate it, but these guys, they had a picture of my dad with a bullseye on him that they kept in their back office because he would beat cases. Funny thing is, today my son was telling me that he had a son when he was at the track and field meet today, when he was on the bus back, because he had to ride back to the school and then drive back. But he said one of the kids I was talking to at the meet, that's a friend of his, on the bus, he was saying his boxing coach was talking about, he said, let me tell you something, guys. Everybody who's over 40 knows that the best criminal defense attorney in this area that's ever was a guy named Steve Askin. And he said, when I heard that name, he says, is that your grandfather that just died? He said, yeah, it is. He said, man, this guy was talking about. So even today, people talk about how good he was because you went to him and he just figured out a way to make it work. So anyways, he ends up getting 7 months in federal penitentiary. That's what they sentence him to. They don't give him 22 years, but the judge, who was a guy who mentored my dad, basically said, my dad at that point it had become clear my dad had a drug addiction. He went to rehab and he was still practicing as a lawyer all the way up until he got sentenced. But it was clear, Judge Stamp said, listen, if he doesn't stop, because at that time my dad had over 750 active cases. It was, if you hired him as an attorney, your case wasn't going to trial for 5 years. I mean, that was just a benefit you got because he had so many active cases. He said, if you don't get out from under this, you're going to kill yourself. So the only way to do that is give you 7 months in the penitentiary. And then that's going to require you to leave. That's going to require you to give up your cases. It's going to let you restart. Now, he never envisioned they would take his law license from him like they did. But ultimately, my dad gave up his license in 1996. And we believed that he would eventually get it back, because, he had a drug problem, but, there's things they could put in effect. Nobody's ever lost their license for the rest of their life after that. But again, also not everybody is as successful like my dad was, who was, beating everybody left and right. Well, he ends up getting out of jail, and the state bar comes at him, and they ultimately annul his license. Not just suspend him, annul his license, which means he had to stay out for 5 years. But when he gets out, that lawyer I told you about, who was walking, young lawyer who just come into town, who was helping him out, was his local counsel. My dad kind of gave some props to him. They get together, and my dad starts his first what became my dad's profession after that. Was he was a consultant / paralegal, where he would go and work with multiple attorneys. And in this, for a few years, he worked with this guy in his office, name on the front thing, paralegal Steve Askin. And the idea was they were going to go into a partnership when my dad got his license back. But then my dad, after contested hearing, when they annulled his license, it shocked him and he didn't get it back. So ultimately, my dad ended up consulting, becoming a consultant up and down the East Coast with various different attorneys, going in and helping them with preparing cases, helping them with their pleadings, taking cases behind the scenes. And that's what he did for a long time. Unfortunately, I'd like to tell you my dad was a success story and got off drugs, but that continued to be a haunting factor. And I believe that was the factor that everybody knew that in the background, that was going on. So they did what they could to keep him from getting his law license back, because he fought. It was an ongoing fight that ultimately led to, my dad was also a college professor, and he taught at Gettysburg College. He taught at a local college. And once again, my dad did everything to an extreme. He would do one-on-ones, and he had like 300 students, more than any professor in history of the college, with one-on-one, because he just loved to help people. One-on-one teachings. But they wanted him, one of the reasons why he wanted to get his law license back is they wanted to open a law school as part of this, and they wanted my dad to be the head of it, but he had to be a licensed lawyer. So he went to try to get his license back. He was also at the same time helping young lawyers. Well, lo and behold, he starts helping all the lawyers in the community. And guess what happens again? Well, all these cases, because my dad was a king at figuring out how to continue a case and create legal issues, he ends up, the whole legal system in the local area gets backed up again. And they start thinking, well, who's behind the scenes with this? It must be Steve Askin. So they go after him again. But this time, my dad was also, and I could talk about this now that he's gone, but he was also helping people with pro se work, which is where this long story was going, because you asked about the pro se work. Because at the same time, my dad was like, you know what? There were clients of his, and my dad just loved helping people. And he went and would tell them, and this is why when YouTube took my monetization, I found the coffee place, because my dad would tell them, buy me a cup of coffee or go to the coffee place and I'll help you. And it would be something maybe like filing their social security work or whatever, something that a lawyer would charge $4.50 an hour. Well, at the time, maybe $2.50 an hour. He'd say, buy me a cup of coffee, buy me a sandwich, have lunch with me, and I'll do it for you because you were a client of mine. I mean, my dad was the type of guy that he lived on favors. One of the reasons why why up until the day he died penniless, but he had people that would help him and give the shirt off their back, because he never charged a police officer. He never charged a doctor. Most people, like Lauren Janae, if she would have come to my dad would have said, and there was a personal relationship of some sort, he would never have price gouged her. He would have charged her the same fee he charged everybody else. And that was one of the stories they told at the store, was they said, Steve, I used to tell Steve, why the hell don't you charge more money? He said, because my dad used to tell me, how many shoes can you own? How many cars can you own? How many pairs of underwear do you own? You wear one at a time. So as long as I got enough underwear for today and enough socks, I don't need extra. I just want to help people. But unfortunately, it trapped him. Good night, Sarah. Good night, TS. But
No.
But it was unfortunately that became kind of part of his down, just something that trapped him in these things he couldn't get out of. But he started doing
in those footsteps.
What's that?
You never thought of following?
Well, yeah, I did actually, and that was like my dream for a very long time. But one of the things I recognized with my dad was how demanding it was. And what ended up happening with me, I was about to graduate college and go to law school. And the lady I was seeing at the time got pregnant. And I had a decision to make. Do I go to law school, which I could have very well done? Do I go to law school, or do I stick around and figure out, and I kind of put it off. And then I was like, you know what? I got to make that decision. Not to say lawyers can't do that, but it was like what I saw in my dad. I never knew until my dad had his troubles. I never saw him. He was, I mean, he had a private plane that he would fly to the other end of the state in a day. I mean, he was always on the road. It was like, I never saw him. I never knew. I mean, I had lots of stuff. I had lots of experiences that nobody else would ever have at my age. And I'm fortunate to have been able to have experienced them, but I didn't have my dad, So I was like, I have Brybear. I think it's something that my dad was even approached about. I have thought about writing a book. It's something I probably should do because it's a story that deserves to be told. It's one of the things that's the most tragic thing is this channel, Justice is a Process, was about it's not about making money or doing anything like that. This was about capturing his story, and I wanted to capture it for the world, and that's what our plan was. But my dad's health at the time was getting bad, and he was still engaging in things he shouldn't be, and we were fighting that. But I was going to put him on, and he was going to be a voice in a picture, a tasteful picture, because his story, I wanted to capture it. I captured pieces of it. Now, the one fortunate thing that I have is my grandmother left. My grandmother captured his entire legal career. Every news article ever written about him in 37 binders. And when we had his funeral, that's why people are still talking about his funeral, because we were able to put all those binders out. It was like a museum recognizing with him. We had pictures, we had old stuff that we'd kept. I'm very proud of him, and I loved him very much. And miss him. In fact, he's sitting right here with me because he got cremated, so we're eventually that's something we're going to be doing later in the year as far as depositing him. So he sits with me right now when I stream. But I wanted to capture because to me, I feel like his story is one that like I said, I told my sons, I hope what my dad went through with his drug addiction, if it stops, it stopped me from ever getting involved with that stuff. And if it stops them from getting involved with that stuff, we will find out, that makes it worth it. And that's what I've told them. It's worth it. That's why that's what he went through for that, and we got to make that mean something, along with many other things. But yeah, he began basically, again, you think all of that is fun. He starts helping people, friends of mine. And unfortunately, I had a friend of mine, he was helping with a DUI. I feel responsible to this day that my dad didn't get his license back, although I think it was other things going on. But we were out for my birthday. My buddy says, I'm going to court tomorrow because I got a DUI. I was like, dude, what do you mean? So you got to go talk to my dad. I said, what are you doing? I'm going to plead guilty. I said, don't plead guilty. DUI, there's many ways you could fight that. And I'm going over it with him. I said, I'll hook you up with my dad. Let me give you his number. I called my dad from the bar and I said, hey, listen, I'm here at the bar with the guy who's going to court tomorrow for DUI, but ignore that. He's going to see you tomorrow. And I said, go talk to him. So they talked to him. And one of my roles was I would help people, like my dad would help. I know a lot about the law, so I would help them understand what they need to do, how to formulate arguments. But the deal always was, my dad's goal always was to cut down on their legal expenses. So he would help them file things up to a point. And then at that point, he had lawyers that he worked with who he would send them to then do the heavy lifting. Well, my buddy goes, we prepare him and get him in there. And he's like, goes in and he has a lot of success. And he's outside the courthouse. I said, son, if you're not going to law school, you need to go to law school. That was incredible. How did you, it's time to hire a lawyer. I don't think I'm going to. He's like Ty Tucker. I don't think I want to hire a lawyer now. I'm doing really well. I'm ready to go. Yeah. And he goes in, what's going on, Jeff? And he goes, so he goes into he goes and keeps the case going. Well, unfortunately, when you got a young kid who's not even graduated college yet, and he's arguing cases and putting forth motions that are, way above what you would expect, they start looking at that. And then they start looking at all these other people, because there was other people that have been coming to court. Because what my dad would do is he would tell them, go down to this case. And this is why I know how to read cases. You go down to that case and get the pleadings from it. And you can copy that motion over, bring it to me. I'll correct it. And as long as you do all the work, the way my dad read the statute was, they're doing the work. He's just correcting like a English teacher would, making sure that the language is right, making sure that they understand, read this case. And I would kind of help in the background, read this, do this. So he goes and, they start looking at it. Well, all of a sudden I'm at work, because the direction I went into finance. My stepdad at the time was in mortgages and finance, the financial world. Now, I really didn't particularly care for it, but I did it because it got the bills paid and helped support the family. Mm-hmm. Well, supported the family, I should say, at the time. So I went into that and started doing that. But I was, at the same time working with my dad, always keeping my eye on the law. Well, my buddy calls me and says, state police are at my house. And of course, immediately my antenna goes up. I said, he said, they're asking about your dad. I said, well, asking what? Tell them whatever you know. I'm bye. And I got off the phone, and I called my dad and said, hey, this is going on. And he said, well, I heard this might be going on because, see, my dad was about to get his law license back. So in reaction, the local prosecutor opens an investigation to start investigating my dad. And because of my buddy, they went to his stuff. They go to his house and they search his house, and they get a computer in his house and they find pleadings on it. And on there, my dad would, hey, go to this person. He's got this, talk to them. And it had kind of evolved to where they get about 13 different people that my dad's helping. So after I guess it's 14 years of fighting, my dad's about to get his law license back. And again, remember, as I told you, his goal was to run this law school for this college and open it up and do all that. And he needed his law license back on top of just being able to, if he wants to try a case, he could do it. So he's getting calls from all over the state, Supreme Court, clerks, people we've heard. It's already been voted on. Literally, the ink's dry. They're Friday morning. This is going to become final. Well, guess what else became final on Friday morning? They go on Thursday night, on Thursday afternoon, they go to the grand jury and present a case against my dad for what they call unlicensed practice of law. It's a misdemeanor offense punishable by $100 fine. But they indict him in circuit court. What that means is, and again, I tell you, I understand judicial misconduct. They did this because...
You don't live in Florida?
What's that? They did this because it normally would go to magistrate court. So in magistrate court, my dad, a magistrate in West Virginia, isn't a legal person. My dad used to help the magistrates. I mean, he used to help them on case law. So they were able to bypass it going to magistrate court, where a magistrate would hear the case, which then by default could have potentially even had a jury trial down there. But because they bypassed magistrate court, it goes to circuit court. Now, no juries allowed. Only a judge decides. But guess who it goes before? There's a local judge who has just applied for a federal judgeship, because there's an open federal judgeship. My dad later found out, I won't say how he found out, but he later found out that literally it had been told, you are to go and convict Steve Askin of this 13 acts of unlicensed practice of law. This will ensure he'll never get his law license back, because the prosecutor in the town did not want him getting his law license back, because she'd even written a letter to the state bar contesting it, saying he's currently teaching young lawyers how to delay the system. He's teaching, he's working with private citizens, teaching them how to fight the system, and they're winning, and they're creating delays, and he's creating all sorts of chaos. If he comes back, he will break the criminal justice system in Berkeley County. So as a result, this judge, now guess who steps in while I'm running my business and running a a financial branch and doing all of that business. My dad says, I need help because he's, not going to hire an attorney. So I became his paralegal. So he and I worked on the case. We tried the case. We appealed the case to the United States Supreme Court. And ultimately, he was convicted of all 13 counts. He was fined $1,300. They successfully kept him from ever getting his law license back. And then after that, my dad pretty much became, he was still doing things, but the sad part was the college he was working for fired him because of the conviction. He lost his job, and then that really sent him deeper down that rabbit hole of places that he didn't want to go. And that was about 2010, 2011. And from there till February of this year, it had been a fight. 2017, it got really bad. He fell because he was, he had physical problems because when you use cocaine for a period of time, it affects your circulation system. And it was a fight, and we went back and forth. So it was one of these things where when I saw all of that again, now I have, as I mentioned, I started with one. Now I have 3 sons and 1 on the way. We're not sure if it's a boy or a girl yet. So I'm actively involved, in my kid's life and everything. And again, my mom was even saying, you need to go to law school. I'm like, well, right now I'm busy being a dad. I got 4 kids, 3 kids and 1 on the way. And because of my dad, I pretty much I left the financial field, which I really wasn't happy. I was making good money, but to me, one thing my dad laid out to me was it's not about money. It's about other things. So, what I do now, I actually, my wife's a nurse. She's,
So was I.
oh, we're okay. All right. Nice. She, and basically, I do various different things. I do, when I left, I basically was having to take care of my dad because there's lots of problems going on with that. My son at the time had just it was right after COVID and everything. He'd become a type 1 diabetic, and we were having problems with all of that. We just had I have 2 kids from a previous marriage, and then we have our 4-year-old, and we've got another one on the way. And there was just a lot of logistical things. What's that? Yeah, I was trying, and I was also having I was so stressed out. I was, my blood pressure was through the roof. So it was I had to make some changes. So, has it all been roses and easiness? No. But I went and started, doing gig work and doing different various things. And then I got this idea. I started doing some stuff with YouTube. I have another YouTube channel, but I don't want to combine the two. So I don't really speak of it on this channel. But I have another channel. It is monetized. I can't speak of it now, definitely, because you're not allowed to do that. I'll lose the monetization if I send people over there from here. But it's very,
really?
yeah, I was told that. Yeah, they said absolutely you cannot do that. So if people discover it, I'm actually kind of putting on some content over there. I've kind of shifted it a little bit, but I'm not. It's related to gig work and what I do. It was basically just documenting my journey of leaving the work, and it documents everything I went through, some of the stuff with my dad and how I was doing that and making money over there, and getting to a better spot. And then I got the idea. I'm like, well, I know a little bit about YouTube. That channel's not. That's why when this channel grew like it did, that channel's got 1,400 subscribers. I just got monetization last year this time, or no, I guess in August of last year. And so it took me a couple of years to get that one built up, and I'm like, so when this one blew up, I was like, holy cow, that's so unexpected. But then I came over here and I'm like, this channel was just supposed to be a passion project. I'm thinking I'm listening to trials while I'm driving around and doing stuff. Yeah. So I'm like, why not just come and talk about them? And then I got into the idea. I'm like, you know what? I can air the trial and, even be in the chat. And then some days, because I'm home some days because my wife's working, so I'm home. I'm like, I can sit here. Well, Sarah, it's only because I lost the monetization on this channel right now. So previously I could have directed everyone over, but they would look at that as trying to circumvent them having suspended my monetization. So if I'm like, hey, everybody, get over there, and then I start posting, similar content or whatever, they're going to look at that as like, you can't just drive everybody over there and then start posting. Be like, well, just post your video over here and over here, or just start posting everything over there, and suddenly that channel blows up. They're going to pick it up. So I'm like, I don't want to mess that up. It doesn't make it doesn't make a whole bunch of money, but it's, like I said, that's got its place because it just tells that whole story. And, with that, and then this was just a passion project. Like I said, it was meant for my dad and I to talk and get his story out. And then he passed away on me unexpectedly. I knew he was having problems, but I thought we had at least a couple more years left. And that was our plan, was like, get this going. And then he was literally supposed to be on the show finally to make his thing. We had fully fleshed out the due process issues he identified and helped me identify. We were going to talk about it all for the James Crumley case, with the way they did that, the law in that case. And he was coming in, and we had done all this research, and he was going to talk about it. And I was going to be having my oldest son go over there to help him, because he was going to broadcast from his house, but he was not going to be able to do it. But my son was going to help, and we were all excited about it. And then he was supposed to come on Saturday. He passed away on Thursday, and I got a call. I was on live. If you go back, I was covering the Hannah Gutierrez case. I'm doing my intro for the day, and you're here. My theme song for my phone is the Rocky theme, and you're here to go off. And I saw it was my dad's friend. And then you almost, my wife says I can't see it. And I said, well, I can, because I know what I was thinking, because I'm in the middle of talking about it, and I'm like, oh no. I'm like, he doesn't call me 3 times, something's bad. So I quickly ended the intro and said, I'll be back. I never came back. I mean, it ran, but I never came back on the rest of the day, because as soon as I got off that, I called him, and he said, my dad was always one, he loved to eat. So he doesn't miss lunch. He doesn't miss dinner. And he was coming to pick him up for lunch. And normally my dad at the time, he was wheelchair bound by that time. And he would always have the door open for whoever's coming to pick him up. And he called me and said, the door's locked, Stevie. He said, I can't get in. And I said, well, that's not good, because he should be there. And he said, yeah, I've been knocking for like 10 minutes. That's why I started calling you. I said, well, I got a key to his house. I'll be over there. And he said, I could probably get the front door kicked in. I said, kick it in. And he did right while I was on the phone. And he said, it ain't good. He was in the bathroom. Looked like in the middle of the night, he'd wheeled over and just was sitting there. So, of course, immediately I, got my youngest, who I was with, called my wife. She was able to leave work and went over there and went through that whole process. Yeah. Oh, I'm still shocked. I mean, I was even talking about it today at the dinner table. It's just it's a shock. And Super Bowl night was the last time we spent time together. He was over here, and I drive past that drive back to his house. I still drive it, frequently. And I'm like, I can't believe that was the last time. My dad's favorite football player was Charlie Taylor. And Jeff, you're not going to like this, but he likes the Commanders. And that night when I dropped him off at his house, he just took the time. He was like, I want to show you some Charlie Taylor videos. And he was showing me these runs that he was a kid at on YouTube. And we sat there and watched them,
and that was
hands.
Before.
Yep. It was right. That was the last time I ever saw him, because it was like a week or so later that he passed. Well, 2 weeks later, that he passed away. I talked to him, but I hadn't been over. I was in fact supposed to go over, because I helped him with his groceries and stuff. And, he had texted me his grocery list and everything the day before. So,
do you think there would still be any prejudice in the small town that you're in, given that you've got the same name? If you
my God, my name. Yeah, I still listen. I told this story at his funeral, so I'll tell you guys. When I opened up shop, I ran a finance company, and for a long time I was out and about, and I finally got an opportunity to I left the company I was with, because I had an opportunity to come back home and finally be here for my kids and see stuff and see their games. And I was like, this is awesome. So I opened up shop. Well, I start going out and I had to network and go to car dealerships and banks and everything, introduce myself. I'm running the place down here. I'm Steve Askin. Well, quickly word circulates. Steve Askin is running a finance company down on such and such. Well, all of a sudden people are coming in, right? And I'm the ranch man. I have my office in the back, and I start getting people requests, hey, so and so's here. They'd like to talk with you. Well, before I know it, I have a line at my office. They're not looking to come in for financial needs. They're coming in looking to track my dad down. So I'm taking notes. So finally, we had to set up a protocol in the office that scanned people, and they would. It was he's not. And are you for dad or son? Because son works here. But if you're for dad, we'll take your name and give it to the son, and he can get dad to call. It disrupted business. There was a line out the door because people were coming in. I had somebody come in an old case. I actually have the files still in my garage, but they dropped off 6 boxes full of trial transcripts that they wanted my dad to review. Because they heard he was still around. We heard he was here. He's trying to file a habeas corpus. We'd love your dad to review it. And it was, of course, my dad's trial. So I kept it because I ended up sticking with it because I'm happy because it's a trial where this guy shot the sheriff in his house. And my dad ended up, it was but I have all the transcripts to the case. And I was like, man, so, it was crazy. So, yeah, I mean, my name, I still walk around. My son, like I said, my son, he's on his schools. They go out and they're like, they hear the last name? You're not related to the lawyer, are you? Well, yeah, that was my granddad. Or I'll say, that's my dad, But is there bias? Yeah, I mean, like I said, I had problems where, like I said, I had two speeding tickets that we beat, but one, and when I was young and dumb and stupid, my dad, I thought my dad would get me out of stuff, really speeding related stuff, and I got a little carried away and got like 2 back-to-back speeding tickets. The first one, I knew the procedure: go down, file not guilty, file your pleadings, whatever. I drop it off at my dad's office, and the lawyer he was with. So second one, I'm driving like, it was 70, 75 and a 55. It was a construction zone. So the lawyer or the cop that pulls me over, he's like, "Is your dad?" And I'm thinking, "Oh yeah, my dad. This is great." Well, no, it wasn't great. This was a guy, my dad and him did not get along. My dad brutally cross-examined him. And they just did not get along. So he walks over and says, "You tell him Trooper so-and-so said I." And he threw the ticket in my driver's license. And I'm like, "What?" So I was heading down the road. So I thought, well, I know what to do with this. I'm going down. When I get back in town, I'm going to go down and make sure I get to the clerk's office so I can file my not guilty and get it over to my dad so he can add it in my other cases. So I go down there. Well, who do I run into but the trooper coming out of the clerk's office? And I'm like, this is strange because I know the trooper shouldn't be down at the clerk's office if he's out on the road. And most of the time, the troopers file their tickets at the end of the week. So I'm like, what's going on here? Well, I go down to my dad's office. I walk in and I lay the ticket on his desk. And he says, "Go shut the door, son." And my dad wasn't really a yeller. Like he was never, when he raised his voice or got upset with you, you knew you were in trouble. It's only happened a few times in my life. But when he did, I knew. Well, this was one of those particular moments. He shut the door and he let me have it and basically made it clear, this stops now. You are going to go down and you are going to plead guilty to this case. And the other one we're helping you with, we will help. But you know, 2 in a week, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, I walk out, tail between my legs. Oh, man. In fact, I was so shook up. It was like a year later I got pulled over and I'm shaking. And the cop comes over and says, "You're shaking like a leaf. Man, what's wrong with you? You got something to..." I said, "I'm worried my dad's going to get mad at me." I said, because he got sick because I'd never seen him that mad ever. Like he was never mad. So anyways.
Like look over the glasses and they know.
Well, I'm driving down. About an hour later, my dad calls me up. Now, it's a different dad now. And he's yelling, but not in a bad way. He's yelling, "That son of a bitch. That son of a bitch. I can't believe it. Son, let me tell you what happened." I said, "What happened?" "Well, that trooper so-and-so, he went down there to the clerk's office and he filed your ticket." I said, "Okay." Well, he said, "Well, I'm helping the head of the state troopers with a divorce. So I already knew, I'll tell you the backstory. I already knew you got pulled over because when you got pulled over, he called me. He said, so that's why I was ready for you. And I thought I'll read you the riot act. He said, but I had already had it worked out that he was going to approach Trooper Walker and get him to tear it up and make sure that never got filed. But that asshole went down. Not only did he do that, but he got on the radio and said, I have Steve Askin's son pulled over, and I told the whole unit, I got him on the side of the road. He said, right here, I'm good. He said, so you know what? I promise me you're never going to speed again. I said, I won't. All right, we're fighting both of them. We're going to beat that son of a bitch. So he said, but you're doing all the work in the case, and I'll have, the guy he was working with, he'll go to court with you. So I had to do all the work. I had to go down. I had to put all of it together. They would file the stuff. Dad helped me do it. They would file the paperwork, of course, on my behalf, on behalf of the lawyer. But over a 2-year period, two trials in magistrate court, appealed to circuit court. We beat both of them. Not only did we beat both of them, but I had the satisfaction of seeing that trooper dressed down by the circuit court judge, because one of the exceptions to speeding tickets is they have to file, if you contest a speeding ticket, the ticket itself is a citation. It's basically an order to appear. In West Virginia, on a misdemeanor, you have a year for them to file a criminal complaint. So if they don't do that, they haven't technically filed charges against you. So that was the strategy. I got all the paperwork. We waited. We delayed. But if they never filed a complaint, we can then file to dismiss because statute of limitations is up.
Yep.
Now, Trooper Walker says, no. When I sign it on the side of the road, it's a criminal complaint. And of course, we challenged. The handwriting was so bad. I mean, my lawyer did all these different things. We actually subpoenaed his high school handwriting records, just things to embarrass him because my dad was upset. So, but when he gets to court, he stands up. Well, the judge said, Trooper so and so, you've been a trooper for 30 plus years. There's no such thing as highway justice. You're not a magistrate and you're not a judge. You know as good as I do. So don't you come before this court and tell me, that it's a criminal. And he says, hold on one second.
I've got visuals of this pompous judge.
So he's yelling at the trooper, and he said, we're going to dismiss the case. He's found out. My attorney, of course, took me to the side and he said, when you leave out of here, you make sure you drive 5 miles under your speed limit, because I'm telling you, that guy's going to be waiting for you to pull you over and give you a ticket. And
three strikes, you're out.
Yep. Well, like I said, the next one I got like a year later, I just went ahead because I'd beaten 2 of them. I said, I'm going to go ahead and plead guilty on that one because I didn't want to have to tell Dad or do anything. I thought, you know what? I got out of 2 of them. But after that, that's why, now my wife and everybody thinks I'm a slow driver because you know what? I'm like, you know what? I don't mess with that. Yep. No. Yep. So, but yeah, that's the sort of, it is. So yeah. And I've got a little one that just popped up because he's needing help. So, and he's come over, everybody else is asleep in the house. So he's asking for me, but yeah, it was a great stream, Jody. We have to do this again. Definitely.
Absolutely.
To talk.
Loved every minute of it. And thank you so much for having me. But yes, absolutely. I would more than happily come back again.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I might do some digging. Oh, hello, little man. Daddy's coming.
Yeah. So, all right, everybody. Well, thank you guys for participating, and thank you, Jody, for putting together the great presentation. Like I said, we're going to have to do this again and talk.
Yes.
And there'll be, I'm sure, there's going to be lots more about the Ty Tucker case, and there's other cases too that we can talk about too. So, we gotta get together again. Yep. All right. I'll see everybody later.
Bye. I never slow up. No, I don't take shit. I got no